In this video I discuss my altcoin portfolio as I'm all in into altcoins and I've been getting hammered, but the markets are bouncing back upwards. So does that mean that I'm swapping towards Bitcoin or ETH, or am I going to sell and quit? What is going to happen? Everything is discussed in this video. It's here for you as I'm sharing everything on my journey for you to learn from it, to see the experience and to make the best of it for yourself as well. Let's get started. Well, overall it has been a rough period, and I must say, even though I'm quite familiar with the amount of stress that crypto can give to you, I must say that the past few months have been quite horrible when it comes to investing into altcoins. And to be honest, the amount of losses we've seen on several altcoins have been extremely heavy, very comparable to the summer of 2020 in some way, I would say, where we've also been seeing a lot of altcoins going down, where in this period in 2024, which I refuse to call summer because it's just not here, we've seen that altcoins kept on falling and being fueled to be going down even more. But Bitcoin itself has been seeing a correction which is very unusual if you look at data. If we look at gold, gold has been making new all-time high, continue to rally, which is technically it's basically a sign that the world is getting more uncertain. That's when gold starts to do well. Inflation is pretty heavy. The inflationary data that we get provided by the governments is definitely not the real data. The real data is way higher. That's why you see gold doing way better as well. The global liquidity starts to wake up, which is usually a signal that crypto will do well, but Bitcoin has still been falling. If we look at the yields at this point, we can see that the yields have continued to fall as well. It's actually at the lowest point since March of the 13th. And we've seen that the dollar kept on falling alongside the yields. And usually when the yields and the dollar are starting to fall or have that downwards turn in the past weeks, that's primarily due to the fact of CPI being super positive for everything that's called risk on. The global liquidity, as I mentioned, is currently going up. And we've had the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, which you can go into any conspiracy theory that you want, but it's definitely, it's fishy. There's something going on there. A few days before that day, Biden called Zelensky Putin. So there's a lot of stuff happening to confuse the entire world because there is a big reset coming up. That's my theory. That's why also there is a case of BlackRock saying that Bitcoin is a hedge against global uncertainty. There's a completely different agenda when they start talking. So there's a whole different level of roller coaster coming up for everyone involved in anything in the world. But if we look at the data and we compare the yields of current yields of the yields in March, as it's the lowest point since the 13th of March, what was Bitcoin trending at that period of time? Yes, that was the day that we actually got the all-time high. And from that point the yields started to turn. So if the yields are currently at the level that is so low, then Bitcoin should be trading around an all-time high, especially with the uncertainty that we have as gold is also there. So there are a few crypto intrinsic arguments why the crypto correction has been taking place. First of all, Germany, well, a Bundes something of Germany has been selling Bitcoin as they seized 50k Bitcoin in January. They finished. They sold the actual bottom. And there's actually someone who was smart enough to send something to Germany and state, have fun staying poor, which technically is the case. I think this is going to be the biggest meme of this cycle in 10 years, where you've got 3.5 billion USD in Bitcoin in possession, which I think is going to be worth 20 to 40 billion approximately 1 to 2 years time. And I think that the countries that actually apply Bitcoin towards them which maybe Trump is going to state next week, but if you apply it to your balance sheet, you're going to be a big winner. So that's 1. 2, Mt. Gox repayments news came out. That was the actual low, which pushed the markets down quite substantially. We were at 56k as we recall. Currently 65% is already done. There is a shock reaction taking place during the actual news item, but most of the pain is currently already in, as 65% have been repaid, and apparently not many people want to sell their Bitcoin. Surprise, surprise. They want to keep holding their Bitcoin. I think that most of the people that were trading Bitcoin during that period are current believers of Bitcoin. I don't believe that many of them were going to sell. I know that some other accounts have been making complete drawdowns of the holders that were going to get Bitcoins, and the impact is just super low. And I think this is one of the biggest events that we're still going to get out there, and we've got it, and it doesn't have any influence. And that's why we've seen that Bitcoin is currently rallying up from that level back to 65k. It's more than 20% up from the actual low. So that's technically a 700 million loss for Germany as well. Now the final one is the miners capitulation that has been taking place. So miners need to continue to sell Bitcoin to make sure that they keep staying alive. If they are in a loss or the hash rate goes down, they need to start selling more to make sure that they can continue to be productive. As it becomes more and more complex to mine Bitcoin, everybody knows the drill. And if that is taking place, if such a capitulation taking place, and the current one was just as heavy as the capitulation during FTX, which means that this correction was just as heavy as that one and is very surely the low of this market. It's not expected that the prices are going to go lower than 53,000, and I think that's very, very certain at this point, especially with all the news items taking place. So we have been trending downwards. Actually, for 4 months, we have been trending downwards. And I think we're quickly reversing towards the all-time high. And I expect in the next month or two that we're going to be trading around the all-time high again. Now, continuing towards my strategy when it comes to altcoins, it is, of course, a very risky strategy. And I recall that when I made that video during the middle of May, which was the low on ETH, against Bitcoin, by the way, that I said, I'm usually too early. And I have the great success of being too early because in 2020 I've done the same. If you run the numbers, I would have been way better off by waiting a little bit. But that's just not my strategy. I think outperforming the markets in some way is usually already substantial. If you do that, then you're better than the markets and then you are in a upper class. So I'm fine. I like to take risks. This time the risk was a little bit too heavy. But ultimately my goal is to make more Bitcoin. And if at this stage, and I'll just bring up ETH against Bitcoin. ETH against Bitcoin since that moment is up 20%. I'm up around 10% on my ETH against Bitcoin. So that's great. Ethereum is doing better than Bitcoin. Ethereum ETF is going to go live in just a few days from now. And there's even a discussion to add staking back into it. That is great. That is great. We've got BlackRock with Biddle. That is a tokenization fund that is having more than 500 million in it already. There's ETC, which have been taking place, that has been super positive with a lot of Web2 founders going into crypto. Well, I would say blockchain, not entirely crypto, but I would say blockchain. That is a very productive, sentiment-based theory on the markets that there is a lot of things happening in Ether. And I think Ether is therefore consistently heavily undervalued, and it has been going into the longest bear market ever. And if we go towards the chart, you can see that May was the lowest point that actually ended the bear market of nearly 3 years. So in that case, we've had a higher return on ETH since then. Another thing, crypto intrinsic, is that usually when you go into social media, investors are looking for arguments why they are losing a lot. And some altcoins that are also in the Ether ecosystem have been trading down due to the fact that Ether has been going into a bear market and has been underperforming. And additionally, because there were venture capital unlocks. And there was a Binance article on low floating, high FTV coins. Which after they released that actual article, they still listed Layer 0 and CK Sync and probably forget one. But I think it's not about, as I mentioned earlier, it's not about the unlocks, it's about the valuations. So if CK Sync and Layer 0 and Starknet are valued at like 5 billion or WorldCoin at an FTV of 30 billion, I think the impact of those unlocks are going to be astronomical during the next bear market. That's going to be pushing the bear market. Because if you run the numbers and you go through the data with Arbitrum, with Optimism, with Layer 0 and stuff, the VCs that were in the seed round are up big numbers on them. So they don't care when they sell. If they need to sell at a 5x during a bear market, it's fine. It's just depending on their thesis. But the valuations are going through the roof as there's so much money that can be pushed into the markets anyway. But if we look at the seasonality of the altcoins, at some point these newer coins are going to be super undervalued and undervalued in a heavy sense so that they get punished even more. Where ETH is already undervalued, Arbitrum and Optimism are lagging behind substantially due to those news items. They are not bad projects. I think they will be doing really well. And then you've got the newer coins that are probably going to outperform even more. So if you look at the others divided by Bitcoin chart, which is on TradingView, it is a chart that you can use to see the valuations of others, which is top altcoins out of top 10, divided by Bitcoin. And they reverse in June. It's happening again. Slowly but surely altcoins are already going up. So some of them are already up like 20 to even 60% from the low. Which means that, yes, I was too early. But when I look at my thesis where I say I think Ethereum will outperform Bitcoin, so I go heavily into the Ether ecosystem, that is still the right way to go for. And I included even more risk by taking those Binance listings, which will likely profit me back very much in the coming few months. I think there is a higher return to be made with these coins instead of Dino coins. I take the higher risk, which is also great. But also, when you look at the cycle that you state that Ethereum is likely going to outperform Bitcoin, it is not for 1 month. It's currently for 2 months. And if we go back into the previous cycle, it was more than 2 years of a bull market of ETH against Bitcoin. So I'm fine. And I think that this cycle is going to stay longer here than next year. Maybe Bitcoin peaks, but probably the rest will continue to run. It depends on how fast it will peak. I think there's more money to be required to make it go up heavily. So I think due to that fact, we need a longer cycle. Anyway, I'm going to rotate through the narratives as the markets are more a narrative-wide, hype-based sentiment at this point. So I choose the right coins that I'm going to invest in. At this point, I'm heavily into the ETH ecosystem, and I'm even more convinced that at this point where OP, Optimism and Arbitrum are this low, as an example, I'm even more interested into them because there is more activity going into the ETH ecosystem, and due to the Ethereum ETF, it's going to be even better. I'm going to hold all my coins at this point. There's no point in selling them quite early. I think the valuations are far undervalued for most of them. They've seen a correction of 80%. Bitcoin is at an all-time high. Ether is not even close to an all-time high. Not even to discuss things like Chainlink or Optimism. They need a triple to get to the all-time high or more, which I think is feasible. I'm going to move more towards DEXs for lower gem coins, as I think that there are a lot of opportunities out there. I think there are a lot of AI coins that are going to do very well. I'm not interested in meme coins. I'm only interested in meme coins when I can actually day trade them. That's what I've been posting on social media too. And as long as ETH stays above the low in May and continues to have hype, I'm going to continue pursuing this strategy. And I've been doing this before. I'm not going to be trading it actively here, but I'm sharing everything that I do. And I've been getting hammered like no tomorrow. But I've been doing this in 2020 and it ended up by a big return. And I'm sure it will do the exact same in this cycle. Lots of great stuff are going to come, and I'm wishing you a great day. I'll be back next week with 2 updates on the Ethereum ETF and a regular one. Ciao.